20% of the population can cost the system 8% of their budget. We looked at a lot of research around Santa Clara County, and they looked at 100,000 people who had experienced homelessness over the course of a year, and saw that the top 10% basically cost on average. So the top 5% were over $100,000 a year, but the top 10% or 1,000 individuals costed the system $50K in preventable utilization, emergency rooms, ambulances, things of that nature a year. And so we looked into what some of those factors were that led them into repeated visits, and just trying to understand the trauma around homelessness. And there are things like exposure to the elements, exposure to opioids, exposure to alcohol, to food insecurity, to a lack of income, lack of social support, all of the things that you guys may be familiar with already. And so that is kind of the basis of our model as it relates to healthcare, is how can we help someone address their social determinants of health to the point where they don't need to lean on the system as much. And so what we have done is we have designed this smart wallet called a Beacon, specifically for people who are experiencing homelessness. We provide these to, we sell these to nonprofits, healthcare clinics, and emergency hospitals that are working to build relationships and navigate folks that are experiencing homelessness. And so they offer this as a resource to someone that's being discharged from the ER or is in case management, or they're reaching on street outreach with the simple message that, hey, you should grab one of these beacons. It'll help you accept credit card donations from people who want to help. We see about 7 out of 10 people who are invited to have a beacon end up accepting one of them. And so if someone has a beacon, they can access funds from this Samaritan network. Probably right now our average is about $40 a month. And so these are individuals and corporations who want to learn the stories of these individuals and invest directly into their goals and needs towards leaving the street. So they're able to access right now about $40 a month on their beacon, and they can use the money in a pretty flexible set of ways. They can either meet with a clinician or a counselor who has access to the money and can use the Samaritan app to order things off Amazon, or to add money to an Orca card or a cell phone, or if they have enough money.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
It was great meeting you all. I have to go, so I have a meeting.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I did
a lot of
your
your presentation.
and again, sorry that I can't stick up longer, but
Yeah, no worries.
Alexandra Greenhill is an expert in social determinants.
Okay.
Yeah, she's published a lot of articles around that on LinkedIn. So she was sitting right there.
Greenhill?
Yeah,
Right
this,
here.
Yeah,
Right here.
yeah.
Oh,
So
okay, I can't wait for her to come back.
yeah, so please connect with her on
Okay.
that.
Thank you so much.
Again, real pleasure, everyone. Thank you,
Lucas.
and we'll be.
So I have a question for you, Jonathan.
Yeah.
A couple of questions.
Sure.
The people who, I use the word most complain, I don't think that's the right word. The people who, the subset of homeless who get the most.
The frequent flyers, yeah.
Well, not frequent flyers. The people for whom this is best suited in terms of compliance, yeah. I mean, that they've got the beacon works, that they're able to generate at least $40 a month, if not more. How does that population of homeless, how do you stratify among the population of homeless for whom this is best suited, and for those for whom it's best suited, how does that overlap with the 1,000 people who cost $50,000 a year?
Yeah, so most of those 1,000 are in the chronic homeless population, so a year or more on the street, and most of them are above the age of it's either they're above 18 or above 30, and 2/3 of them are male, 1/3 of them are female, mostly single adults. And that is where, so we've piloted now with 500 individuals, and the majority of them have been chronically homeless. So there's obviously a portion of people who experience homelessness that are experiencing such severe mental illness that they don't have the capacity to use this effectively on their own behalf. But we find that, I mean, like I said, we targeted the chronically homeless population, and that's where that 7 out of 10 number comes
So
from.
would you say, even though you just said you targeted the chronically homeless, would you say that the biggest impact that your intervention has is in preventing people from becoming chronically homeless? Or-
No, I think that people who are on the brink of homelessness, as well as people who are newly homeless or transitionally homeless, those individuals, you have programs like United Way's Job Connect Van, rapid rehousing, diversion programs that they're just like, let's pay a move-in deposit, get you indoors, get you a job, get you a storage locker. Those sort of things work well for people who are about to become or have just recently become homeless.
And I have another question.
Yeah, sure.
Go on. You know, the advice I think that's put out widely is for, often you hear is not to give money to individuals, but to give to organizations. So how do you overcome that? Or is-
Yeah, I'm happy to share more. So, I mean, when people get money on their beacon, they're able to address needs as they see fit. They have, like I said, 2 ways of using the money, and so they can meet with a counselor who has access to that money as a discretionary fund and can apply it towards what the person needs most in concert with that individual. But the person also has the agency and the dignity to be able to go to a short list of merchants that accept the beacon as a form of payment directly. It's not an either or, it's a both. In terms of obviously United Way and Mary's Place need to exist. They're partners of ours. Mary's Place is a customer of ours. But so obviously Mary's Place needs to exist for this to work. But we see that even $40 a month can get someone into a full-time job. We had an individual who got $40 on their beacon, had a couple ways to use it. They could either use it to refill a cell phone plan, to get rain gear because they were living outdoors, or to hire a career coach in the community who charged employees at Amazon or at Microsoft $125 an hour for her time, but for beacon holders charged $20 an hour. So he hires her for 2 hours, and the next day he's got a job at Safeco Field. So, I mean, in terms of, is this worth investing into individuals versus just organizations like the United Way, the ROI is pretty compelling.
Yeah, and I guess hearing what you're saying, this is essentially designated giving.
Yeah, it's like universal basic income starting with the most poor.
Yeah.
Anyways, so kind of getting into the health space a little bit.
Yeah.
So the beacon is free for the individual to use, but every 30 days requires a battery change and a renewal. And so what that does is it channels people into these deepened relationships with clinicians, with counselors. They can choose to go to a clinic and do a triage-based care visit, or they can go to their counselor, their case manager. Really anyone that's using Samaritan can renew their beacon. And so it's not that first visit, but it's 6 or 7 visits down the road that we're seeing that there is enough of a relationship built where that person can start advocating for some difficult change to happen. And so we have given 500 of these beacons out through organizations like Valley Cities, which is a behavioral health clinic in Pike Market, and Salvation Army, St. Vincent de Paul, Mary's Place. And from the 500, we're seeing this interesting 10-5-1 ratio. So from the 500, we saw just under 50% of them throw the beacon away or not, kind of stay on. But 274 of them, or just over 50%, started meeting with a counselor on a more regular basis and reported meeting either a financial need through the Samaritans that had added money to their beacon or a social need. Beacon holders can receive messages of encouragement from Samaritans, opportunities, connections, as well as the relationship they're building with the counselor or clinician themselves. They reported meetings either a financial or social need we would call that like a lower level determinant of health, access to utilities, access to food, access to non-professional support, professional support. And then from those 274, roughly 1 out of 5 of those, or 1 out of 10 from the original treatment group, actually moved into permanent housing, supportive housing, got a full-time job, agreed to enter a full-time treatment program for 3 months, got into a forklift training at Goodwill, different things like that. So we would, call that a higher level determinant of health. And so from this 10-5-1 ratio, we've looked into a fair amount of research that has been done from Harborview with their 1811 East Lake Housing Project. United Health has done a lot of research into how social determinants of health affect health outcomes. And there is a pretty strong correlation with these major determinants of health with a 50% or greater reduction in utilization. And there is some research that looks at things like storage, food, income, social support, and ties that to roughly a 25% on average reduction. And so this is not data that we were associated with Samaritan, but they have showed that housing and employment and freedom from addiction can lead to some of these numbers, and some of those other smaller determinants can lead to some of those. And so, we're at this stage right now where, we're seeing some anecdotal data around how this has helped people address critical determinants of their health, and from a business standpoint or a sales standpoint, which is obviously why we're all here, we're looking at a couple things. The first, Lukash, he talked about these different phases, and we have sort of the same thing going on with like basically 3 phases, and my question is like is really about phase 2. Phase 1 is where we're just starting to license these beacons to organizations, either their nonprofits or their clinics or their hospitals, and it's cost-based pricing, so it's just basically what it costs us to administer the hardware, the data, the software, the training, the support, plus some margin. So for 1,000 beacons, we're looking at our average contract size of around $175 to $225K a year, and we've gotten contracts along those lines from 3 different places so far. So we're still pretty early.
And what kind of places?
So this is like a recuperative care program in Orange County, a housing group on Skid Row in LA, and then a different housing group in Oklahoma City. And we also have a PMPM model, which is just $20 PM.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be better to just spend that money on giving people $40 instead of doing something that costs $175 to $200?
Well, yeah, if the infrastructure doesn't exist,
Okay.
That's a good question, but if the infrastructure doesn't exist, then we go back to giving cash to people, which could be good too. But there's a lot of mechanisms that help these individuals access relationships that aren't possible when we're just talking about giving cash to folks. So anyways, phase 2 is looking at like value-based contracts, which is what a lot of these startups before me were exploring. But the thing is, this idea, like, we're talking about 50% reduction, 25% reduction, even if you just look at the 50% reduction, we're talking about saving a system potentially $25,000 per person per year.